You are listening to episode 82 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness teachers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Rose Pavlov joins us to speak about Ivy Child International. As mindfulness becomes more common in contemporary society, so is its acceptance as part of public and private school systems. Children are learning how to observe their outer environment and inner experience, widening the gap between stimulus and response, and making more intentional choices in their words and actions. Along the way, they learn valuable lessons in the value of finding calm. Rose Pavlov is the founder, president, and CEO of Ivy Child International, an international nonprofit that develops and facilitates mindfulness-based cross-cultural health education programs. As a child specialist and educator, her research interests range from applied positive psychology and mindfulness-based learning with children and youth to international issues such as overcoming devastation and trauma, as well as urban challenges. Her professional experiences have led her to partnerships with UNICEF and World Vision. Most recently, Rose was a featured TEDx speaker on Unlocking Children's Potential Through Mindfulness in 2014. Special thanks to Adelis Rodriguez for her help in arranging this interview. Our guest today is Rose Pavlov. Rose, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So glad to be speaking with you. And as you and I have discovered in our conversation prior to starting the interview, we can talk together for quite some time.
And a real joy.
So, Rose, why don't you get us started by tell us about your background.
Sure. My family hails from Kerala, India, and my parents immigrated to the United States prior to my birth in the mid-70s, and I was born and raised in New York beginning 1979. And I was born to a father who was an academic, a business academic, and my mom was a homemaker and then later became an accountant, the youngest of three children. I had two older brothers, Matthew and Thomas. And so I was, born in very much an immigrant household and part of the first Indian American generation here in the U.S. And meditation and mindfulness was very much part of my background. Oftentimes when I'm asked, when were you introduced to practice or where did the practice come from? It was really, quite frankly, I was introduced to the practice within my mother's womb. And it's been part of our intergenerational way of life. It has been embedded both in a traditional sense as well as a non-traditional sense. Mindfulness and meditation practice is something that we did wherever we were, on the go, at home. And so our background was really entrenched in a lot of Indian culture, Indian traditions, Indian values, Indian great food and attire and music. Was very much my meditation in many ways over the course of time. And we had the very good fortune of experiencing life here in the West, in America, and traveling to India every summer vacation growing up. And so that was very much part of my childhood and evolving navigation of the cultures and the language and the literacy in a variety of sorts, which I feel really, really fortunate about. And my parents were very devoted to ensuring that my brothers and I were aware of our cultural value system, and they really embodied and were models of what mindfulness really truly is. And so that was an incredible model to be born into and been raised and environmentally, further fostered around all that we did.
So you had this as part of your life, and I'm wondering how you might characterize the influence that mindfulness has had on your life.
It's really been, an essential foundation in, my life. And I look at oftentimes when people think about, the key influencers or the masters that have taught them, I really wouldn't be able to have any discussion around mindfulness or really give it justice without sharing the influence that my family, my parents, who have been my masters of mindfulness and my teachers really from the time I can remember. I mean, they really brought me into the world and shared all that they know and lived by, in addition to my brothers. And then, the people who are my teachers on an ongoing basis are really my own children. I have my children here at home who share their mindfulness teachings and allow me to strengthen my own practice as well. And so when I think of the people who influence my practice and the most, it's really my family.
So let's talk about our main topic today. What made you decide to start Ivy Child International, and what is it?
Sure. Ivy Child International is a nonprofit organization based here in Massachusetts, devoted to universal mindfulness and education. And I started Ivy Child really out of sheer need. I first started to create it as a graduate student, taking Tal Ben-Shahar's Introduction to Positive Psychology class as an effort to unite health and education in a way that was culturally sensitive, not clinically or deficit oriented, and using the platform of education to really capture diverse communities in a way that was not fault-finding or in any way negative perceived by them. Because oftentimes when sometimes communities or children struggle and we as societally put a label on it, whether it be, defiance or aggression or other difficulties that we might be navigating. And sometimes if you tell a parent, your child is suffering from aggression and they should go to an aggression reduction group, the likelihood of a family following that kind of plan is highly unlikely, particularly when they come from communities of color and there's a lot of stigma associated with mental health difficulties.
And it's difficult news to hear that this is something you need to deal with.
But, I think that, we have to provide an opportunity to really allow children to learn mindfulness as really an essential life skill to help navigate all of the seasons of life and to provide a better way to cope and navigate our day to day. And we work in a world and we live in a world where so few of the children have the opportunity to do just that. So this was really an effort to integrate mindfulness into education in a way that was natural, that was not punitive, that was not, in any way trying to alter the approach and what we were offering, but also in a way that was very natural. So universally, people everywhere typically value education. They might not be inclined to have their child intervene into a clinical program to maybe help with anxiety or other difficulty, but they value their child getting a credible education. And so using the platform of education to really elevate and to create access in mindfulness has really been our mission and vision. And I was an educator for some time, and I worked in the health and clinical arena for some time. And like I said, this was really a way to unite both platforms of health and education to really broaden access to, children and families and community constituents through the hub of academic institutions.
So tell us about some of the kinds of programming Ivy Child International does.
Sure. So we provide district-wide mindfulness education programs to Boston Public Schools, Worcester, New York City, and a range of other academic institutions. Our focus is really the daily practice of mindfulness in schools and communities, devoting time in school learning time, particularly into developing that daily practice and to enhance not only our psychological immune system, but really our overall well-being, and ensuring that that daily devotion of time and practice can really have a transformative power on our life. And so our programs are devoted to really first working with all those that interface with children. So that can be teachers, staff, administrators, human service workers that work within a school system or otherwise. And we first provide mindfulness training to them, for them to understand what mindfulness is, what mindfulness isn't, why it's important, the vast benefits and that research shows that it has, and also to support what creating this space in their school day can actually look like and why they should actually be aware of what's happening. Because we certainly don't want to offer mindfulness programs in a silo. We need buy-in and support from all those that interface with children. And we really need them to be models of mindfulness. It's really hard and challenging when you're offering a mindfulness program and the kids are developing these great tools and skills to implement into their lives. And then all of a sudden the adults in their lives. So when we really look at the framework of creating access and developing the practice and experiential learning for a single individual within Ivy Child, the focus is with the children at the center of our work. And really with the true belief that if you provide the opportunity for a child to learn and develop a mindfulness practice, they not only implemented that practice and that the impact of that within their own life and their own life circumstance, but really that ripples out into impacting all of those around them. From their family to their peers, to their neighbors, to their larger community. And we at Ivy Child call that the mindfulness multiplier effect. And that's really the goal of all that we do, is to create this mindfulness multiplier effect by each individual that we serve and teach mindfulness to.
So you mentioned some interesting things in that, and I want to unpack a little bit of it, that it's really necessary for you to have the support that's involved from the adult community, whoever they are within school systems. I'm wondering if you have some other ideas around what makes a successful mindfulness program for youth.
Well, you certainly need, from our experience, support across systems. It's not just siloed into a single classroom, but really leadership from the highest level of leadership to really the entry point of this work. And so we really believe that everyone who interfaces with kids, it can be a janitor at that school or front office staff, or it can be the superintendent of the school system, where everyone needs to be aware first and informed about this work to then understand the value that it creates. And then the other piece is to really looking at children and youth as agents of change, because they have this incredible innate ability to not only be mindful, but to share what they know. And we have what we call a youth ambassadors program, which allows our children to really be ambassadors to this work, not only within their academic communities, but really within their larger communities through, partners like the Boys and Girls Club or other human service agencies that interface with our kids, where the kids can really have the opportunity to share what they know. And I think there has to be a multi-system approach connecting campus to community, so work is not running in a silo. And I think that across what we see is that those that interface within this mindfulness multiplier effect have to have access and experiential learning in mindfulness too, in order to actually support, because people can't support what they don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned experiential learning, and I'm wondering if you're running into any challenges with just that concept within a public school system. Is that different from how teachers are reaching their students these days, or have things shifted into more experiential models?
Well, there's certainly a challenge, particularly because so many within the school sector and really the human service sector at large are operating in a very depleted and chronically stressed capacity. So really addressing mindfulness, particularly as a self-care tool, I think is important first before addressing classroom strategies or interventions with kids or really, getting to what we can get, will and do get to, but I think it really needs to come down to where are we at individually? Where are we at collectively as a community, as these caregivers to our children? How are we operating? What is impacting our own ability to be mindful, from our day-to-day diet to our rest pattern to our relationships to how much exercising and exercises that we're engaging in on a regular basis? Are those things nourishing or depleting? Are they gratifying to us? Or are we just operating in a complete depleted capacity, which is most often than not the case that we find with those that are really working with our kids, is that they are so stretched and stressed themselves that we need to really to discuss and really have them experience mindfulness as a self-care tool before moving ahead with strategies to work with kids.
What are some of the other challenges you've run into in getting mindfulness in schools? Because that comes with some inherent misunderstandings about it that you might need to wrestle with.
So I would say the biggest challenge within sharing mindfulness within schools is really resources, resources by way of finances, resources by way of personnel, finding really qualified educators that are willing and can implement this work within urban communities. Oftentimes, the educators that we train within the school system sometimes will self-notedly state, I'm too depleted or I'm too stressed out. I need somebody else to be the mindfulness expert. And then offering multimedia tools, creating more digital toolkits. I think that is also a resource challenge that can honor the individual sort of, nuances within each school system. That is a tremendous challenge. But the actual prioritization for why this work is important is no longer a campaign that we have, or is no longer an issue. I don't think it's difficult to draw in school learning time to, or have leadership understand that this is important. I think that now more than ever, we have communities and kids that are suffering in a variety of ways, but certainly in the social emotional learning arena and the social emotional sort of behavioral state. There's now more than ever, we see this sort of pervasive culture of suffering. And so I think it's really clear that something has to be done. And thanks to the growing body of academic research and white paper, we have so much support to show the impact that it can have. So the resources of their challenge really ends up being resources in other ways of how we can make these programs really successful, and how can we equip individuals that we're working with better tangible tools to carry on this practice and their work beyond their tenure and time with us.
So let's shift our hearts to the light a little bit and ask, what's your favorite success story? Maybe there are a few.
So my favorite success story is one actually based in Worcester, where our initial public school intervention was working with 30 middle school girls. When Worcester Public Schools surveyed school data by way of who would benefit the most from a daily mindfulness program, the population that had the most significant issues around impulsivity and reactivity and self-regulation was actually middle school girls. So we devoted a daily mindfulness-based learning program to 8th grade girls within Claremont Academy in Worcester. These were kids who were getting into lots of trouble and had high levels of disciplinary sanctions, and were very, very well known to the administration for lots of colorful reasons. And although I have to say that has been one of the toughest programs I've ever run in my entire experience of sharing mindfulness to the world, I look at the kids that completed that program. So out of 30 middle school girls, 28 completed the program. One student was truant and one student transferred out. And I look at that base of incredible individuals who had very natural leadership ability, but were using them in all the wrong ways. They oftentimes were the instigators and aggressors. But when provided the safe haven and opportunity to really journey within and develop a greater understanding and awareness about their own lives and trauma, to really help heal and overcome these wounds that they carried and, really operating in combat mode, that program ran several years ago now, and the youth from that program are now leading this work within the city of Worcester. I look at the evolution of, really these kids who become my daughters, and the remarkable courage and strength and light that they share with their both life experiences. And they're incredible warriors and also incredible ambassadors to social change. One in particular, her name is Miranda, and she is now, sharing this work across, systems beyond her school, but, after school programs with law enforcement that we have in conjunction with the police department in Worcester, where they're really agents of change who are sharing this work. And also, as a result, enhancing their own well-being and navigating life and being able to then use and share these skills with others, which is really such a gift to us in the work that we do each day.
And a fine example of what you had described as the multiplier, that this is reaching out far beyond that initial program.
Absolutely. And this, to see it really come really full circle from really a kid who is the most challenging student in the entire program, that was highly aggressive. I mean, we look back now. I mean, she calls me her Ivy Child mom, but that's not what she used to call me in those early days of the. She used to have a lot of colorful language, but really, I mean, to witness her evolution and growth into a fine young lady who has been able to draw on her own mindfulness practice in a way to really discover her superpower. I mean, she really feels like the sky is the limit, and being able to achieve her own dreams and drawing on that same leadership ability and in other aspects of her life, whether it be sports or academics and now being able to hold and sustain a part-time job and really having pathways to greater aspirations for growth and learning. By going to college, she would be the first individual in her family to ever make it to college. I'm really hopeful, and I trust that she will. Yeah, so it's really remarkable to witness the evolution of these kids and how they're using these tools beyond just the impact it has on their own lives, and really devoting and making a commitment to community as well.
We may have already stepped into the territory of this next subject. Is what's the change you would like to see come out of this work?
A big part of why we do what we do is to create universal access to mindfulness, and really creating a bridge between ivory tower and the amazing things that are happening in the academic research arena to those on Main Street. And, we're pioneering and entrenched in this movement to create access. And so what I would love to see is this universal access where all those in our community, from the most vulnerable to the most affluent, have access to experiencing and learning mindfulness. That is really what I would love to see happen, and that involves collaboration, partnership, communication, care, prioritization, ongoing advocacy, and to really be able to come together across systems and community to really ensure that we are all being mindful and prioritizing access to learning mindfulness from the time that we're born into this world and beyond.
Rose, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
We always welcome opportunities to connect and collaborate, so please don't hesitate to reach out to either me directly via the organizational website, or I'm on social media as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Great. Our guest today, Rose Pavlov. If you'd like to find out more about her work, go to ivychild.org. And of course, that will be linked on the episode page for this episode. Rose, thank you so much for being here.
A deep bow of gratitude to you, Ted, for all that you bring into the world. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.